The remains of a U.S. military Humvee smoked slightly in the unforgiving dawn. Anna was trapped, pinned beneath a section of twisted, black metal, her right leg angled unnaturally. The stench of burnt fuel and dust stung her nostrils. She struggled, biting back a scream that would only betray her position. Her military-issue radio was shattered, the screen dark and inert. Anna, a raw whisper. Crawford, anyone. I'm at the ravine. Grid Delta 6. God, my leg. I can't feel my foot. Silence answered her, deep and vast. The only sounds were the crackle of cooling wreckage and the distant, unseen movements of the desert. A shadow fell over her, abrupt and silent. Anna froze. Khaled stood over her, his face a mystery obscured by a thick, sand-colored scarf and the harsh light of the rising sun. He was tall, his clothes layered and worn, blending seamlessly with the rough terrain. Anna, fumbling instinctively toward where her pistol should be, the movement a mistake. Stay back. Don't move. I swear I have a weapon. Khaled raised his hands slowly, deliberately, palms open, the universal, unspoken plea for peace. He lowered them, then pointed emphatically at her leg, then to the horizon where the sun was now burning, then back at her. His eyes, dark and ancient, conveyed a sudden, focused urgency. Anna, I don't understand you. Are you hostile? Are you with the local patrols? Khaled shook his head once, quickly, fiercely. He knelt down near the wreckage and began carefully shifting the smaller debris, testing the brutal, dead weight of the metal pinning her. Anna, panicked, her voice rising, wait. Don't touch it. The bone might be shattered. You'll sever the artery. Don't move it. Khaled looked at her, his eyes deep pools of warmth and a strange, powerful empathy that transcended the language barrier. He placed a gentle hand on her uninjured shoulder, a featherlight, yet utterly firm, pressure of reassurance. He then pointed to the twisted metal, then to himself, then made a forceful, demanding grunt of pure, sustained effort. He was telling her he would lift it, but only for a moment. She had to be ready. Anna, tears streaming down her temples, nodding frantically, okay. Just enough. But be careful. Please. Khaled took 3 deep, controlled breaths, his chest expanding beneath the heavy fabric. He gripped the jagged edge of the metal and with a powerful, strained, almost wordless sound, he strained, lifting it just enough to clear her ankle. Anna cried out, a strangled sound of agony, but she managed to twist and pull her leg free. He lowered the metal gently, reverently, allowing it to settle without jarring the earth. Anna, a long, shuddering gasp, thank you. I don't know how. Khaled gave no reply. He immediately retrieved a worn, cracked leather waterskin from his bag and offered it to her. She drank greedily, the cool water shocking her system back toward lucidity. Anna, speaking slowly, trying to simplify, I need the rendezvous point. The safe zone. 5 miles east. Can you? She mimed walking, then pointed emphatically east, toward a distinct set of triple peaks visible on the horizon. Khaled nodded instantly, his familiarity with the terrain absolute. He knew exactly where she meant. He pulled a long piece of clean, white fabric from beneath his tunic and began to expertly bind and splint her leg to a piece of straight wreckage, his movements quick, efficient, and professional. As he worked, Anna noticed a small, faint, copper insignia, a flash of metal engraved on the thick leather clasp of his waterskin bag. It was stylized, complex, a tiny marker that seemed out of place with his rugged nomad attire, but it was too small and too quickly moving to identify. Anna, trying basic English, hoping for a word, hospital. Help. 5 miles. Water. Khaled simply nodded again, his expression settling into a look of absolute, unyielding determination. He crouched low to the ground, turning his broad back to her, and stretched his hands out, gesturing for her to climb onto him. Anna hesitated. She didn't know this man. She could not speak his language. He was a complete unknown in a land where strangers could mean death. But the desert was vast, the sun was rising, and she could barely crawl. Anna, to herself, a forced resignation. All right. Survival wins. Trust the hands, not the eyes. She struggled onto his back, wincing in pain. He secured her carefully with the thick binding fabric he had just used on her leg. He adjusted her weight once, effortlessly, finding the perfect balance, and began the long, silent, excruciating walk into the brutal heart of the desert. The 5 miles had begun. The sun climbed higher, relentless and unforgiving. The first hour of the walk was a baptism by fire. Khaled's steps were measured, relentless, falling into a tireless, mechanical rhythm. Anna was pale, already weakened by shock, clinging desperately to his shoulders. The pain in her leg was a throbbing, rhythmic, all-consuming agony. Anna, softly, into his ear, trying not to break his focus, "You can stop. Please. Just for a minute. You must be tired." Khaled shook his head slightly, never breaking his stride. He only lifted his free hand and pointed to the blinding sun, then to her splintered leg, then back to the path. He communicated the harsh reality without a single word. "No. The heat is coming. We must keep moving. Rest is danger." He adjusted his grip again, a simple, intuitive shift that eased the pressure on her ribs. "Anna," the silence became a conversation in her mind, "he doesn't know me. He doesn't know my rank. He doesn't know if I carry gold or just an empty pack. He's not being paid. There is no commendation for this man. But he carries me like I am the most precious, fragile thing he owns. It's a weight of fate, not obligation." Anna reached for the small, battered digital camera that was slung across her chest, wanting to snap a photo, wanting to document this impossible compassion, but she stopped herself. Some moments, she realized, were too sacred for the lens. She just held on, focusing on the rough texture of the fabric beneath her cheek. Mid-morning crawled into being. They crested a minor ridge line, revealing miles of undulating, merciless sand stretching before them. The lack of dialogue amplified the few sounds that existed, the soft slish of sand beneath Khaled's boots, her own shallow, ragged breathing, and the frantic thump-thump of her own heart. Anna, trying to communicate a memory, I was supposed to meet my team here. They call it the Serpent's Mouth. The ravine was supposed to be safe." Khaled made a series of quick, clicking sounds with his tongue, a sign of understanding or perhaps disapproval of the name. He pointed down into a deep, shadow-filled trough. He changed his course slightly, leading them toward the cooler, shadier bottom of the ravine. Anna began to remember a story she was told in training, that the desert had a code. A rule that blood, regardless of flag, demanded aid. But codes felt mythical now, overshadowed by the reality of the dust on this man's tunic. Anna, speaking purely for connection, "My mother, she used to tell me stories. About heroes. They never looked like this. They always wore shiny armor." Khaled paused briefly, sensing the shift in her emotion. He reached a finger up, tapped the fabric of her uniform, then traced a line of dust down his own sleeve. The meaning was clear: uniforms change. The heart does not. High noon. The temperature was a brutal, physical force. They had traveled perhaps 2.5 miles. Khaled stopped suddenly behind a low, jagged dune, dropping to his knees. He was breathing heavily, his shoulders trembling with the effort, but still completely silent. Anna, weakly, her throat sandpaper dry, "Water. Please. I need." He retrieved the water skin, but before offering it, he slowly, painstakingly unwrapped the scarf covering his mouth and nose. He revealed a face etched deep with the harsh lines of the desert, but his lips were kind. He wet the edge of his scarf and gently dabbed the cool water onto Anna's blistered lips, ensuring she didn't drink too fast. He gave her only a tiny sip, then tilted the skin to his own lips and drank a mere fraction, ensuring the majority was reserved for her. Anna, looking at his calloused hand, overwhelmed by the selfless rationing, I'm Anna. That's my name. Anna." Khaled tried to repeat the sound, his tongue unfamiliar with the cadence. He tried 3 times, slowly, inaccurately, but with immense, focused reverence. "Khaled," a dry, earnest whisper, "Nah." Anna, smiling weakly, tears of gratitude rising, "Yes. And yours." Khaled looked away, pointing instead to the small, intricately carved leather locket hanging beneath his outer garment, which held his scarf in place. He made a quick, decisive gesture that meant don't worry about my name. It does not matter. He then turned and immediately gestured again, his hands demanding she climb back onto his back. Anna, he won't give me his name. He won't allow a thank you. He just does the thing that needs doing. Is this what true, pure goodness looks like? Unburdened by ego? Uncontaminated by expectation? He is shattering every preconception I ever learned in a briefing room. She climbed back onto his broad, strong back. The journey resumed. The afternoon stretched into an eternal trial. They passed the 3-mile mark. The pain in Anna's leg had dulled into a relentless, exhausting throb. They began to encounter minor rockfalls and patches of loose scree. Anna, trying to keep his spirits up, tell me something. Anything. A song. A story. You must have a family. A son. Khaled paused only long enough to tilt his head, a question in his eyes. He lifted his hand and pointed to his chest, then swept his arm out, indicating the desert. This is my life. My family is the sand. They reached a dry riverbed, a wadi. It was a steep, difficult climb. Khaled was beginning to slow, his breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Anna estimated they had 4 miles behind them. Anna, frantic with worry for him, look, stop. You need to stop. You're overheating. We can wait for the sun to go down. I can feel you shaking. Khaled stopped, but not to rest. He pointed sharply toward the sky, then made a low, rising sound like a far-off engine. He communicated, the helicopter. It is coming soon. We must be visible on the high ground. He was pushing to reach the final peak. Anna, no. You're exhausted. You're going to collapse. Khaled pulled out a small, dried piece of fruit, a piece of his own precious ration, and pressed it firmly into Anna's hand. He refused to take any for himself. He took one final, sharp, desperate breath, and began the brutal ascent up the dusty, steep bank of the wadi. He stumbled twice, the exhaustion visible in every strained muscle, but caught himself, never letting Anna fall. Anna, sobbing, her voice thin, why? Why are you doing this? I'm just a stranger. I could be your enemy. Khaled reached the top of the bank. He collapsed onto his knees, pulling Anna to a gentle stop beside him. He paused, looked back down the difficult path, and then back at the horizon. He closed his eyes for a long, quiet moment, a look of profound, almost spiritual exhaustion washing over his face. He opened his eyes, looked at Anna, and tapped his own chest, then tapped her chest. The silent answer was a vow, we are the same. Human. That is enough. Dusk began its quick descent. They were now less than a mile from the known rendezvous point. The air was cooling, a temporary relief, but Khaled was struggling immensely. He was dragging his feet, swaying with every laboured step. Anna saw the first real sign of rescue, a thin column of smoke rising faintly in the far distance, the smoke flare from the forward observation post. Anna, screaming into the darkening wind, there, I see it. The smoke. Just a little further. Khaled tried to respond, but only a dry, rattling cough escaped his lips. His body began to sway violently. They fell to their knees, collapsing onto the sand in a tangle of limbs and fabric. Anna managed to push herself off his back, crawling toward his side. Anna, pleading, shaking his shoulder, hey, look at me. You have to move. You got us this far. You carried me 5 miles. I can't leave you here. Khaled could only raise a shaky, dust-caked hand, pointing weakly toward the smoke. He was telling her to save herself. To crawl to the signal. Anna shook her head vehemently. Anna, no. Not without you. You don't understand English, but you understand this. We finish this together. With an impossible surge of will, Anna gripped his arm. She helped him stand, reversing their roles. She leaned on her splintered leg, supporting his massive weight as they stumbled, step by painful step, toward the smoke. 5 miles had become their whole world. 5 miles of silent, shared, absolute humanity. The smoke was closer now, thick and black against the indigo sky. They could hear the unmistakable thwack 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 of a helicopter arriving. They collapsed together onto the hard, dry ground just as 2 US soldiers burst from the smoke, rifles up, their faces a mixture of relief and aggression. Soldier 1, into radio, shouting, "We've got her. Sergeant Reed is alive. Leg injury. We have a local male civilian, non-combatant. Looks severely dehydrated." The scene exploded into chaotic action. Medics rushed in. Anna was immediately placed on a stretcher, straps being secured around her chest. Anna, struggling against the medics, "No. He needs help. Water. His name is, he doesn't speak English. Get him water." Khaled was carefully being lifted by another medic. He was conscious, but weak and dangerously exhausted. As they separated him from Anna, he reached out one last time, his hand searching for hers. Khaled, a single, raw, choked word, his voice breaking from disuse, "Nah." Anna, reaching back, her gratitude overwhelming, absolute. "Khaled. Thank you. I owe you everything. I promise." As Khaled was secured on the other stretcher, the blinding overhead lights of the rescue helicopter illuminated the scene with clinical, brutal clarity. Anna's eyes, finally clear of sweat and dust, fell directly onto the small leather locket Khaled wore around his neck. It had been pulled free from his tunic by the medic's movement. The light struck the copper insignia engraved on the clasp of the locket. It was not a symbol of faith or family. It was the sharp, unmistakable, stylized cobra insignia of the Viper Brigade, the very enemy militia unit notorious for the precision ambush that had crushed Anna's Humvee just hours ago. Anna's breath hitched. The immense, raw, pure gratitude on her face curdled, freezing into a mixture of utter, dizzying horror and profound, paralyzing betrayal. Anna, whispering, voice hollow, barely audible, "No. It can't be." The medics pulled her stretcher quickly toward the chopper door. Khaled, on his stretcher, saw her expression change. He saw her eyes fixed on his locket. He knew she understood everything. He met her gaze. There was no menace. No triumph. Only a silent, agonizing sorrow that perfectly mirrored her own confusion. His fierce eyes, moments ago the eyes of a savior, now held the unbearable pain of a man whose identity was a contradiction. He was the one who ambushed her patrol, and he was the one who saved her life. Anna, yelling, straining against the restraint straps, "Wait. Who are you? Why did you? The Cobra. Why?" The chopper door slammed shut, cutting off her sound. Through the small, thick window, she saw Khaled's stretcher being wheeled toward a separate, ground vehicle, as the helicopter lifted rapidly into the air. He was looking at her, his face illuminated one final time by the glare of the departing chopper lights. He raised his hand, not in a goodbye, but in a silent, mournful acknowledgement of the impossible, 5-mile truth. Anna was lifted into the high, cold air. She was safe. She was alive. But the memory of the 5 miles, the unconditional kindness, the silent bargain, the intimate, shared humanity was now hopelessly contaminated by the undeniable image of the enemy's cobra on his locket. Her savior was her enemy. Her enemy was her salvation.